Okay, so start with the recording again for the second lecture. My second lecture is on let me share my screen with you first so that we both are on the same page. Open the book. Observation is something I've given to you. Focus groups within intervals we're finished. So let's see how data analysis is done for qualitative studies. This is what the chapter is about. Qualitative data analysis is chapter 16 as per the book I have included on your LMS. So we are going to read and have a discussion substantiated. So we are talking here about three important steps in qualitative data analysis. Keep in mind, qualitative data is more about learning, it's more about content. Okay, so we learn data reduction, we learn data display, and drawing conclusions. These are the three techniques of qualitative data analysis: data reduction, data display, and drawing conclusions. We'll also learn how reliability and validity have different meaning in qualitative research in comparison to quantitative, and how reliability and validity are achieved in qualitative research. Then we'll talk about comparing and contrasting content analysis, narrative analysis, and analytical induction. We'll talk about characteristics of big data and why big data holds many promises for organizations. So first things first, qualitative data are data in the form of words. This is a form of it. Examples of qualitative data are interviews, transcripts, focus groups, open-ended questionnaires, open-ended questions. It could be transcripts of video recordings, ट्रांसक्रिप्शन ऑफ वीडियो रिकॉर्डिंग. ट्रांसक्रिप्ट क्या होता है? लिखा हुआ कंटेंट जो है वीडियो रिकॉर्डिंग से, जो आप लिख रहे हैं और जब आप एक वीडियो देख रहे हैं साथ साथ आप उस आप एक वीडियो रिकॉर्डिंग देख रहे हैं साथ साथ आप उस चीजें लिख रहे हैं, उसकी ट्रांसक्रिप्शन है. ठीक है. And the same is the count of experiences with the product on the internet, news articles, and the like. So this is called qualitative data. It can come from a wide variety of sources, which could be individuals, it could be focus groups, it could be government records, publications. So inferences made from them can be at times daunting and overwhelming. So, but there are methods, and three important steps in qualitative data are, as I mentioned, data reduction. So analyzing qualitative data is not easy. Qualitative data numbers में होता है, numbers interpret करना आसान है. Qualitative data को interpret करना ज़्यादा challenging. So there are some techniques we can use. A person whose work stands seminal in this is Miles Lieberman. His work stands in when it comes to getting the interpretation for the qualitative data. Now, according to them, there are generally three steps in qualitative data: the reduction, the display, and the drawing of conclusions. So first you reduce the data, narrow it down. So data reduction refers to the process of selecting, coding, and categorizing of the data. Right? Right? Since you're reading a news article on sharing economy, you know what is sharing economy? Sharing economy is an economy that people are not buying things, rather they are sharing. Okay, for instance, there's a car I buy in the first place. Okay, right, fine. So I use it for my office 9 to 5, but after 5 when I come home, it's parked in my Porsche. Liba has an evening duty, so she comes to my home and she says that, Miss, can you lend me a car? I'll pay you instead for 2 hours, the time she wants the car. So I say, right, fine, you can pay me 10K and you can have my thing, take it. So 10 o'clock, she after 2 hours, she drops the car back, pays me the money, and then Fahad comes and he says that, Miss, I need your car. And this is the sum I'll pay based on the agreement we both have. So this is how I earn, and this is how they get to go in the car respectfully wherever they want to. Rather than owning the car, they are sharing. This is the sharing economy that people usually use things on a sharing basis. There is less possession, there is less buying. Moreover, things are used on a sharing basis. Right? ठीक है, जैसे पाकिस्तान में राइड हेलिंग सर्विस है, ये शेयर्ड इकोनॉमी का एक हिस्सा है. ठीक है, तो सपोज करें हम एक आर्टिकल पढ़ रहे हैं शेयरिंग इकोनॉमी पे. ठीक है, सही. तो पहली बात कुछ ठीक है, how do people share access to goods, services, and resources on different digital platforms? Have you heard of Airbnb? जैसे मुझे अगर सपोज करें मुझे लाहौर जाना है अपने किसी काम के सिस्टम में, मेरी रिहाइश तो कराची में. ठीक है, here I have a permanent abode, I have a house there with my parents. लेकिन मुझे लाहौर जाके किसी होटल में नहीं रहना, मैं चाहती हूँ किसी घर में रहूँ. कोई फैमिली हो, मैंने अपना एक रूम मुझे वो नहीं दे रहे, मैं रेंट पे देना चाहता हूँ 15-20 डेज के लिए, जब तक कि मेरा काम है मुझे दे दे. तो एयरबीएनबी एक ऐसी सहूलत है जहाँ पे लोग अपने घर को रेंट पे दे देते हैं 10 दिन के लिए, 5 दिन के लिए, महीने के लिए. ठीक है, सही है, राइट. तो शेयरिंग होगी, मुझे जाकर प्रॉपर्टी खरीदने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ी वहाँ पे. राइट, ठीक है. So let's see some articles here on Dawn newspaper. Are they writing something? There any writing articles on sharing economy? So there is an article here, streamlining the sharing economy. This is 2017 article. Does it make a difference? This is all qualitative information or qualitative information. The numbers display such article say it to them. So coming back to our is my book. So data reduction refers to the process of selecting, coding, and categorizing data. So ये जो पूरा मेरे पास piece of information है, this article I've taken from Dawn News newspaper. इसको जब मैं qualitative analysis करूँगी तो मैं क्या करूँगी? I'm going to do some data reduction. This is lots of content, lots of codes, right? So data reduction में क्या काम क्या करेंगे हम? कुछ processes करेंगे जिसमें हमारे पास क्या जाता है? पहले हम select करेंगे information, फिर हम code करेंगे and then we will categorize. Then second stage includes data display. It refers to the way of presenting the data. the data that we think is going to give us some information उसको हम present करते हैं fast तरीके से, right? So it could be in the form of a matrix, it could be in the form of a chart, it could be in the form of a board. So the display would be through a certain presentation and a format, right? And that is simply to make the data more understandable. And based on that, we can draw conclusions. और इस data में हम क्या ढूंढते हैं? हम patterns ढूंढते हैं, right? If you remember last class में मैंने आपसे क्या किया था? हमने कुछ patterns determine किए थे in some content, right? There was some content, 5 pieces I put on the table, and I found that everyone is writing something. However, one word is repeated by all. That was pattern. तो हम pattern analysis करते हैं, ठीक है? अब ये क्या है? There are some standard general stages. Stages, or just a quantitative study, more or less step by step. The qualitative study is more reiterative. Okay, it's more iterative, where you're moving from one step, going back to the same, coming back, going back, coming on, going back. So it is more a continuous and an iterative process, right? Okay. Then you have a stay. For instance, हम जब data coding कर रहे होते हैं, coding is again part of reduction. ठीक है, coding में क्या है? It may help you simultaneously develop ideas on how the idea will be displayed, as well as to draw some preliminary conclusions. When the time comes, I'll show you how it's done. अभी हम बस read करके एक knowledge develop करते हैं, then we'll move forward. ठीक है? For instance, data coding may help you simultaneously to develop ideas on how the data will be displayed, as well as how the preliminary conclusions can be made. So the preliminary conclusions that we made may be a feedback in the way the raw data are coded, categorized, and displayed. So let's see an example and develop some understanding from it. So qualitative research may involve repeated sampling, collection, and analysis of data. Repetition is a very key word. Okay? Quantitative studies में हम एक बार सैंपल करते हैं, right? ठीक है? Data collection एक बार होकर डिपेंड करता है नेचर ऑफ स्टडी पर, एनालिसिस ऑफ डेटा मोर और लेस हम एक दफा करेंगे. ठीक, क्वालिटेटिव स्टडी में ये आइटरेटिव भी हो सकता है. ठीक है, सही है, राइट. हम सैंपलिंग को बार बार रुजू कर सकते हैं, हम एनालिसिस ऑफ डेटा को बार बार रुजू कर सकते हैं, पैटर्न्स देखने के लिए फॉर इंस्टेंस. ठीक है, कोडिंग करने के लिए फॉर इंस्टेंस. सो as a result, qualitative data may already start after some of the data have been collected. The chapter will discuss 3 qualitative important steps, as I mentioned: the data collection, data display, and the data conclusion. So let's take them one by one. What is data collection? So qualitative data includes large amounts of data. ठीक है, data क्या है? ये तमाम चीज, सब data, सारी information जो है coding की some data. ठीक है. And the first step is reduction of data through coding and categorization. लार्ज अमाउंट ऑफ डाटा को हमें जब कंडेंस करना, नैरो डाउन करना, तो हम क्या करेंगे? हम करेंगे coding and categorization. Coding is the analytical process through which qualitative data that you have gathered are reduced, rearranged, and integrated in the form of theme. Right? ठीक है. So huge amount of data that you have on the table, codes से हम क्या करते हैं? Data को reduce करना. Coding helps you reduce the large stack of data. And फिर इंफॉर्मेशन बेसिकली उससे रीअरेंज भी हो जाती है. सही है, एक तरह से इंटीग्रेशन मिल जाती है आपके तमाम प्रेसिंग इश्यूज को, वो थ्योरी की फॉर्म में सामने आता है. ठीक है. नाउ कोडिंग हेल्प्स यू ड्रॉ कंक्लूजंस, meaningful conclusions. Codes are labels given to units of text which are later grouped and turned into categories. We'll do it. हम देखते हैं कैसे इसको किया जाए. कोडिंग बेसिकली हम जब करते हैं तो हमारे जो पैटर्न्स होते हैं उनके ग्रुप्स मिल जाते हैं. ठीक है. And coding is an iterative process as you have to move to and fro. आगे पीछे content पूरा move करते हैं to find similar patterns. ठीक है. Repetition देखते हैं, data में understanding develop करते हैं, तो इसके through जो है हम coding करते हैं. That is, you are able to recognize patterns in the data, to discover connections between the data, and to organize the data into coherent categories. Hang on, please let me see my. Trying to upload my course lecture for you, so there is still 7 minutes left for the data to be processed. Coming back, so coding is an iterative process. ठीक है, हम यहाँ पे एक केस लेते हैं. So this is the instigation of customer angle. मैं इसमें coding कर रही हूँ. Right. So this is learning by doing is in curriculum. So this is time consuming, this is learning by doing, this more time लगता है और have to get into pen paper practice study it. इसके इंस्टीट्यूशन ऑफ कस्टमर आई थिंक इसका कोडिंग करेंगे क्योंकि हम पैटर्न्स ढूंढेंगे, कनेक्टिंग पैटर्न्स ढूंढेंगे और हम फिर के उनको रीइंस्टेंस करके हम इंटीग्रेट करके एक थ्योरी बनाएंगे, ठीक है. सो लेट्स रीड इट. सपोज इंट्रोडक्शन में हम क्या पढ़ रहे हैं, लेट्स ट्राई टू ओरिएंट विद व्हाट द सिनेरियो इज अबाउट. So suppose that you are in a fashion shop, that you just found the clothing item that you love. You go to the counter to pay for them, for the item. At the counter, you find a shop assistant who's talking to a friend on her mobile phone. So you wait. You wait for a couple of more minutes. But the shop assistant is in no hurry to finish the call. This event may make you angry. Waiting for service is a common cause of anger. The longer the delay, the angrier the customers tend to be. Okay. So this whole scenario seems it is about a customer who is waiting for a call to end by the staff on the store, and there's a delay cause, so the customer is likely to be angry, and this anger is very likely. आपकी किताब कह रही this anger, this cause is very likely क्योंकि हम स्टोर पे क्या गए हैं, सामान खरीदने आए, स्टाफ का काम क्या है, हमें अटेंड करें ना कि नेवर एंडिंग कॉल्स में एंगेज रहे. ठीक है, सही है. तो हमें टॉपिक तो बड़ा क्लियर है, कोडिंग हम पढ़ना जेनर की. Now what I'm doing is on my page I am making maps. So this is about customer's anger for not being attended. ठीक है, सही है. और कॉज क्या है, मैंने एक चीज लिखी, प्रॉब्लम इज कस्टमर एंगर फॉर नॉट बीइंग अटेंडेड. कॉज मैंने क्या लिखा है, स्टाफ listening to phone call. So let me take a Word document. I'm using a pen paper, but for your ease, I'll have a Word document with a type it. Right. Okay, हम क्या कर रहे हैं, हम पैटर्न्स ढूंढ रहे हैं. हमने इंट्रोडक्शन के अंदर भी एक इंडिकेटर ढूंढा है, लेकिन इंट्रोडक्शन में कुछ समझाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. So this is my pen paper and problem is customer anger or staff history right. Remember हम कोडिंग पढ़ रहे हैं, ठीक है, हम बेसिकली पढ़ रहे हैं डेटा रिडक्शन. The step that we are studying is basically data reduction. So the research objective prior in marketing has applied appraisal theory to understand why anger is expected in such situations. So there is a mention of appraisal theory. वो theory justify कर रही है कि why consumers get angry when such incidents happen between consumers and the store staff. तो theory भी support कर रही है. Appraisal theory की बात करें, ठीक है. Appraisal refers to the process of judging the significance of an event for personal well-being. इसको मुझे हाईलाइट कर लेते हैं. Appraisal refers to the process of judging the significance of an event for personal well-being. ठीक है. The basic premise of appraisal theory is that emotions are related to the interpretations that people have about events. People may differ in specific appraisals that are illustrated by a particular event. For instance, waiting for service. But the same patterns of appraisal give rise to the same emotions. So this is a bit about the theory. Theory support करती है, ठीक है, कि जैसे events होते हैं, ऐसे भी emotion भी होती है. So Most appraisal theories see appraisals as being a cause of emotion. Along these lines, appraisal theory has been used to understand why anger is experienced in some settings. So ये theory justify कर रही है कि situation में consumer का anger बढ़ता है. All the present theory provides useful insights into the role of cognition, emotional service, and counter. Recent research suggests that although there are clearly associated with anger, none of the aforementioned appraisals is a necessary or sufficient condition for anger to rise. Anger theory, appraisal theory support तो करती है इस चीज को. सिचुएशन में कंज्यूमर का एंगर बनता है, लेकिन वो ये भी बात कर रही है कि देयर इज रोल ऑफ कॉग्निशन. लॉजिक का भी काम होता है इसमें, रैशनल का भी काम होता है. ठीक है, इमोशन को कर्टेल करने का, इमोशन को पैसिफाई करने. सही. So there's a role of cognition in emotional service counters, and although they are clearly associated with anger, none of the aforementioned appraisal is necessary or sufficient condition for anger to rise. तो अगर हम कॉग्निशन को यूज करें, ठीक है, तो एंगर इज अनलाइकली. इसको भी हम कहीं मतलब piece of information है. All in all, causal theory supports the scenario. Also says that use of cognition to come makes you the anger to them. So हम बेसिकली क्या कर रहे हैं अपने लिए, एक हम कॉग्निशन से कहते हैं नॉलेज, लॉजिक. हम लॉजिक को यूज करें तो फिर इमोशन जो है वो हार जाता है और लॉजिक जो है वो जीत जाता है. So what's more, for the specific purpose of avoiding customer anger, appraisal theory is little too abstract to be diagnosed for services management. सर्विस सेक्टर में थोड़ी abstract भी है, ये सही है. So it is a bit too abstract. ये भी हम जरा देख लेते हैं. That is, service management may benefit more from classification of residences that are considered to be unfair. For instance, waiting for service in both areas. Then from the finding that unfair events are generally associated with customer anger. I can't wait. What is this? That is, service form management they benefit more from a classification of residents that are considered to be unfair than from the finding that unfair events are generally associated with customer anger. In other words, this is true. Let's see. In other words, to be able to avoid customer anger, it is crucial that service form management knows what specific precipitating events typically elicit this emotion in customers. Obviously, यानी कि अगर वो फॉर्म्स जो कि सर्विस सेक्टर में है वो पहले से जान लें कौन से वो इवेंट्स होते हैं, क्योंकि जहाँ पे इमोशन कंज्यूमर का ट्रिगर होता है तो वो सिचुएशन पहले हो ही ना. After all, it is easier to manage such events than the appraisal that may or may not be associated with the particular events. Therefore, the study investigates events that typically instigate customer anger in services. The study builds on a rich tradition of research in psychology that has specified typical instigations of anger in everyday life. In addition, it builds on research in marketing that has identified and classified service failures. The study बताती है कि service failures companies में, services industry में क्यों होते हैं. They are the reasons that customers switch to other services. इससे हम ये भी एक लिंक ले सकते हैं, रिलेटेड मैटर ये भी है. अब मेथड क्या है, प्रोसीजर हमें फॉलो करना है, क्वेश्चनर है, सैंपल की बात करना है. चलो ठीक है, लेट्स सी व्हाट दिस इज ऑल अबाउट. तो मेथड क्या है, following related research in marketing the critical incident technique CIT was used to identify critical behaviors of service providers that restricted customer time. Okay. So critical incidents were collected by 30 trained what? Trained research assistants who were instructed to collect 30 critical incidents each. In order to obtain a sample representative of customers of service organizations, they were instructed to collect data from a wide variety of people. Participants were asked to record their critical incidents on a standardized form in the presence of the interviewer. This has several advantages such as availability of the interviewer, to answer question and to provide explanation. So हम क्या कर रहे हैं हम आप डाटा कलेक्शन कर ठीक है सही है right we are asking participants to record incidents where such a situation has occurred and you now which is a matter करती है यहाँ पे availability of the interviewer to answer questions and to provide explanations. In real time में ये चीज कंडक्ट कर रहे हैं जिसको हम प्रॉब्लम होता है which is जो बनाएंगे participants are asked to record the answers in a standardized questionnaire, structured questionnaire होगा, which was modeled after previous applications. Previous studies को देख के जो सवाल आप लोगों से पूछना चाहेंगे हमने questionnaire में शामिल किया, questionnaire बना दिया. The questionnaire began by asking is supposed to indicate which of the 30 different services they have purchased during the previous 6 month period. 30 services हमने इनको कौन सी purchase किया. Next, participants were asked to recall last negative incident with service provider that made them feel negative. कोई एक negative encounter. They were asked to describe the incident in detail by means of open-ended questions. तो कुछ questions हमने open-ended भी रखे. आप मुझसे बताएं कहाँ पे क्या glitch आया? Why were you irritated? Open-ended questions were what service are you thinking about? Please tell us in your own words what happened. Why did you get angry? And try to tell us exactly what happened, where were you, what happened, and what the service provider did, how you felt, what you said, and so forth. We will open it up right? Sampling कैसे करेंगे? Critical incidents were identified as events, combinations of events, or series of events between the customer and the service provider that was customer. The interviewers collected 859 incidents. The participants, male and female, which represented the cross-section of the population. Their ages were between 16 to 87, and the mean age was 37. Approximately 3% of the participants were less than high school education. 45% had a bachelor's. The reported incidents covered more than 40 different service businesses, including banking, insurance, personal transport, government and the police. They took some demographic information. And the average negative events had participants included within 18 weeks of the year. So we have this piece of information. Coding begins with connecting the coding world. Political product and we analyze it. Leverage examples of coding words include words, sentences, paragraphs, and names. So we do some work regarding coding analysis. इसमें क्या जाते हैं कुछ words हमें देखने को sentences देखने कुछ paragraphs देखने को कुछ text देखने को इसलिए बस search करेंगे. Right. The smallest unit is generally used in the world. A larger and more useful content analysis is the thing. Single assertion about the subject. When you are using the theme in a coding unit, you are primarily looking for the expression of an idea. Thus, you might assign a code to a text unit of any size, as long as that unit of text represents a single theme or issue. So we have an example. After the meal, I asked for the check. The waitress nodded and I expected to get the check. After 3 cigarettes, there was still no check. I looked around and saw the waitress was having a lively conversation with the bartender. Let's do some coding here. So we're looking for words, we're looking for themes. We are looking for paragraphs, we are looking for sentences. The critical incident contains two themes. Can you find two themes? The waitress does not provide service at the time she promises to. The first theme. The waitress nodded, and I expected to get the check. After 3 cigarettes, there was still no check. There's a theme mentioned here, but the person keeps waiting. Pehla theme, right? Second, the waitress pays little attention to the customer. She's not late because she's very busy. Instead of bringing the check, she's engaging in a lively conversation with the bartender. ये चीज़ बताई गई है. एक, they are not paid in time. The second thing is carelessness or low priority of the bartender. The person is engaged somewhere else. The two themes are mentioned. ये दो theme हमने निकाले. So accordingly, the aforementioned critical incident was coded as delivery promises that were broken. हमने एक कोड बनाया. कोड क्या होता है? आप एक टाइटल देते हैं, आप एक टॉपिक देते हैं, उसको हम कोड कहते हैं. तो कोड कहाँ से आ रहा है? कोड आ रहा है मसले से. ठीक है. पहला जो हम जुमला पढ़े इसको हमें कोड बना सकते हैं, उसको हमें थीम दे सकते हैं. किस चीज के बारे में है ये? ठीक है. डिले इन द प्रॉमिस. So the waitress does not provide service at the same time she promises to. So there's a delay in the promise, delay in the delivery, delay in the commitment, delay in the promise. She's there to deliver the service in time. However, she does not. She nodded, and nod means that I'm expecting that the check is coming any minute. So I have finished with 3 cigarettes and still there is no check. तो आपने से क्या थीम बनाया? Delay in promises आप कह सकते हैं. ठीक है. The first one is about delivery in the promise. देखो कैसी थी? The promise was broken. तो एक थीम आपने ये, एक कोड आपने ये बनाया. आप थीम कहें, कोड कहें. थीम से हम कोड बनाते हैं. तो कोडिंग आपने क्या करी? पहले वाली थीम की. Now this is the theme. Okay, this is the theme. This is the theme. तो बहुत डिस्क्रिप्टिव है. ठीक है. These are the themes. जो पैसेज आपको पूरा गिवन है डिटेल में, इससे आपने क्या निकाला? सॉरी, वेरी सॉरी, ये जो आपके पास यहाँ पे एग्जाम्पल है, this example, the 2-line example. From here, you've determined 2 themes, and from the themes, you are doing coding. Coding क्या है? Simply giving an outline, a word. के क्या चल रहा है यहाँ पे? मामला क्या? 2 लफ्ज़ में आपने एक 2 अल्फाज में बताना है. सही है. पहले आपने क्या कोड निकाला? Delivery promises that were broken. ठीक है. Second आपने क्या किया? Second thing is about the personal attention that was not provided. ये आपने second code बनाया. ठीक है. The waitress paid little attention to the customer. यानी कि she's not late because she's busy. Instead of bringing the check, moreover she's engaged in lively conversation. The second आपने जो code बनाया वो क्या है? Personal attention. Right. So sequence बनाया. पहले हम theme बनाएंगे. So we have themes. Right. Okay. This time, lesson perspective. ध्यान रखिएगा हम डेटा रिडक्शन पे काम कर रहे हैं. सही है. So this example illustrates how codes, delivery promise, and personal attention help us to reduce the data to a more manageable amount. देखिए हमने किया क्या? ये जो आपके पास पूरा सिनेरियो था यहाँ जिसमें हमने पढ़ा वर्ड बाय वर्ड हमारे अंडरस्टैंडिंग डेवलप किया. दिस वेरी सिनेरियो दैट वी बिल्ड इंस्टिगेशन ऑफ कस्टमर एंगल. इसमें आराम से वो मोर देन 500 वर्ड्स ऑन टाइप सराउंड मोर देन 500. लेकिन हमने इस पूरे से क्या किया? हमने इसको पूरा समराइज कर दिया इनको 2 थीम्स. सॉरी सर, दिस थीम और ये रिलेटेड किससे है? इससे रिलेटेड है. सही है. हमने इस पूरी इन्फॉर्मेशन ये 2 जुमलों की हमारे पास पूरा एक कंटेंट था. हमने से 2 थीम निकाल ली, इन्फॉर्मेशन को मजीद कंडेंस कर लिया और थीम से हमने क्या बना दिया? कोड्स बना लिया. So note that proper coding not only involves reduction of the data but also making sure that no relevant information are in it. Codes जब बनाते हैं तो codes शॉर्टर वर्जन तो होते हैं एक डिटेल्ड इंफॉर्मेशन का, लेकिन वो इतने शॉर्ट ना हो मीनिंग कन्वे ना, ठीक है। दैट इज इंपॉर्टेंट द कोड्स विल प्रॉमिस एंड पर्सनल अटेंशन कैप्चर मीनिंग ऑफ द कोडेड यूनिट ऑफ टेक्स्ट, ठीक है। एक हमने मामला खत्म कर लिया जो कि क्या है, डेटा रिडक्शन। कोड्स कैसे बनाए, कोड्स नंबर्स बनिए जनरल के कोड्स क्या है, डिलीवरी प्रॉमिस एंड पर्सनल अटेंशन, ठीक है, सही है। सो आगे हम चलते हैं एंड अबाउट डाटा एनालिसिस, ठीक है। Data analysis क्या है? Since the term critical incident can refer to either the overall story of the participant or the discrete behavior contained within the story. The first step in data analysis is to determine the appropriate unit of analysis. In this study, हमको वाला जो हमारा डिटेल केस था उसको रिकॉर्ड करना है, जैसे रखिएगा जिस सारे मामला आगे इसी केस के वाले से मिले। So you have to move to and fro, ठीक है। आपको अल्टरनेटिवली आगे पीछे मूव करना है चीजों के लिए to develop it and understand it. यूनिट ऑफ एनालिसिस भी हम उसी केस पर डिफॉल्ट में करेंगे। वहाँ पे एक वर्ड मेंशन है, टर्म मेंशन है, दो वर्ड्स मेंशन है, सॉरी, क्रिटिकल इंसिडेंट, ठीक है। सो क्रिटिकल इंसिडेंट कैन रिफर टू आइदर द ओवरऑल स्टोरी ऑफ द पार्टिसिपेंट, क्रिटिकल इंसिडेंट है ना, ठीक है, और it could be the discrete behavior contained within the story, उस स्टोरी को लेकर भी सब हो सकता है, ठीक है। Now the first step in data analysis is to determine the appropriate unit of analysis. In this study, the critical behavior is chosen as the unit of analysis. इस चीज में क्या देख रहे हैं, क्रिटिकल बिहेवियर देख रहे हैं customer का staff customers that understood in the first place. So for this reason, 600 critical incidents were coded into 866 relevant behaviors. For instance, critical incident in which a service provider does not provide prompt service and treats the customer rude manner was coded as containing two critical behaviors: unresponsive and critical behavior. आपको और information यहाँ पे given है। Critical incident where service provider does not provide prompt service and treats customer in a rude manner, ठीक है। इसमें दो क्रिटिकल बिहेवियर है, एक तो कस्टमर की सफरिंग है, ठीक है, दूसरा क्या है, रूड मैनर ऑफ द सेल्स पर्सन। हमने यहाँ पे दो जो है वो कोड बना ली हैं, एक इंसल्टिंग बिहेवियर, ठीक है, और एक अनरिस्पॉन्सिवनेस, राइट। ऐसा भी चॉइस ऑफ वर्ड्स है, मेरी अलग हो सकती है, आपकी अलग हो सकती है, लेकिन इवेंचुअली हम हिट एक कॉन्सेप्ट को करेंगे, ठीक है। इंसल्टिंग बिहेवियर को फॉर इंस्टेंस बाद में से डेरिवेटरी बिहेवियर, राइट, ठीक है। अनरिस्पॉन्सिवनेस हो सकता है, अरीबा बोले हैविंग नो रिस्पॉन्स, से बात एक ही, हम एक ही चीज को रेट करें, कोड्स हमने बना लिया। डेटा एनालिसिस में आपका आया है कैटेगराइजेशन, इट इज द प्रोसेस ऑफ ऑर्गेनाइजिंग, अरेंजिंग, क्लासिफाइंग कोडिंग यूनिट्स। हमने कोर्स बनाए थे, ठीक है, ये हमने कोर्स बना लिया था। एक कोड बनाना था, एक कोड बनाया था, तो चीज अगर हम ये एग्जांपल ले लें, डिलीवरी प्रोमिसेस एंड पर्सनल अटेंशन, डिलीवरी प्रोमिसेस, why still so many Muslim thousands of Muslim minutes to do Stockholm. think it's taken a little time. The video I've uploaded for you today, I've made for you today morning, that was in focus groups. Focus groups. Even if I'm not able to channel as well, able to watch from the that's how I was structured. Know that I was when I was sending you the YouTube thing separately on the WhatsApp. I don't think that. So when I tell you this is the second time I've uploaded it for the processing. So I get back to my work here. So talking about categorization, it is a process of organizing, arranging and classifying coding units. So coding हमने पहले करनी है, फिर हम categorization की तरफ जाएंगे, right? Okay. Codes and categories can be developed both inductively and deductively. So, okay. In situations where there is no theory available, you must generate codes and categories inductively from the data. आपको जो इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स आपको जो वोकैबुलरी आपको जो रीडिंग आपको गाइड करती है पूरी थ्योरी पढ़ने के बाद जो आप इंड्यूस करते हैं उसी बेसिस पे आप कोर्स बना सकते हैं, ठीक है, सही है। और इसको हम ग्राउंडेड थ्योरी भी कहते हैं, ये कोई पास्ट एविडेंस एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता, पास्ट थ्योरी एग्जिस्ट नहीं करती, पास्ट फिनोमेना एग्जिस्ट नहीं करते, पहली चीज आपने देखी और फ्रॉम द पैटर्न्स यू आर कमिंग टू अ theory that this is what has happened. Now, in many situations, you have preliminary theory. Past situations, preliminary exist करती है, findings already exist करती हैं, phenomena exist करते हैं, on which you can base your codes and categories. In these situations, you can construct an initial list of codes and categories from the theory, define them and use them. फायदा मुझसे हो जाता है कि हम बिल्ड ऑन कर रहे हैं ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्टिंग थ्योरी पे, देयर इज लेस अ चांस ऑफ बीइंग रॉन्ग, ठीक है, सही। डेटा एनालिसिस की हमारे पास categorization की मजीद we have an explanation here further. So qualitative data analysis was used to examine the data. As a first step, when judges coded critical incidents into critical behaviors. Next, subcategories were developed based on the critical behaviors. Then the two judges, he and we independently developed mutually exclusive and collectively subcategories and subcategories in 1 to 200. ऊपर से बात और हमने बात की ना डेटा कलेक्शन from these respondents. And two other trained judges, C and D, independently sorted the critical behaviors into the categories for the judges, and finally, this is how it's carried out. So, unless we do an example, we won't be able to figure it out. Example, so as you begin to organize your data into categories and subcategories, you will begin to notice patterns and relationships between them. ये हमें यहाँ पे प्रोफेशनल पार्टनर्स देखेंगे, अब एक क्लासेस को सब लोग पढ़ रहे हैं, आप 6 के 6 लोग लेकिन 6 के 6 लोग जो है अलग नोट्स बना सकते हैं, वर्ड्स के थ्रू सेकंड में कैटेगरी अलग है, yet they would get the same findings अगर वो क्लासेस समझ रहे हैं, ठीक है, सेम थीम आपको निकालेंगे, राइट, हाँ कोड्स आप लोग अलग अलग यूज कर सकते हैं, बैंक ठीक है। Now, based on the codes that you have, you're going to analyze that data. For instance, new categories may have to be identified. Definitions of categories may be changed, and categories may have to be broken into subcategories. This is our iterative process. This we have from categories of development. So, as I said, qualitative study थोड़ी सी मुश्किल होती है, understand मुश्किल नहीं है। But हालांकि विभिन्न quantitative study करते हैं, software हमारे बहुत सी findings हैं, on a click of a button, आपको बहुत से निकल के सामने आएगा, तो qualitative study थोड़ी rigorous होती है, तो दो टाइम बहुत से words, बहुत से content पढ़ने के बाद आप कोर्स निकालने लगते हैं, right? So system was my sure. So everyone focus works for you all. So categories बनाएंगे. So participants should go to the wide range of critical behaviors that may impact. ये past case को हम लिंक करवाएं. ठीक है. बहुत सारे critical behaviors सामने आते हैं. So some of these behaviors are closely related to the outcome of the service process. ये हमारे पास क्या आ गया? एक category आती है. बहुत से behaviors क्या थे? Outcome related. It doesn't my suitcase was really damaged. Outcome है. कंज्यूमर के एंगर है, उसकी फ्रस्ट्रेशन है, किस चीज को लेके, आउटकम को लेकर. तीसरे में ये हुआ हमारे पास आउटकम रिलेटेड जो है वो एंगर सामने आती है सर्विसेज में. ये एक कैटेगरी है. अदर बिहेवियर्स वर रिलेटेड टू सर्विस, ये इज अनदर कैटेगरी. फॉर द 3 days इन अ रो आई ट्राइड टू मेक एन अपॉइंटमेंट. ये सर्विस का फेलियर सर्विस का नहीं बताना है. ठीक है. लाइन वॉज टू बिजी. ये कैटेगरी सर्विस को लेके है. पहली कैटेगरी आउटकम को लेके थी. फिर अगली कैटेगरी हो सकती है इंटरपर्सनल रिलेशनशिप्स को लेकर, जिसमें फॉर इंस्टेंस she did not stir a finger. She was definitely not intending to help me. Right? Interpersonal relations. Less willingness of somebody to help you. Finally, customers got angry because of inadequate response to service failures. Yeah, this is another category. It's a codes categories. Let's see. He did not even apologize, or he refused to give me back my money. ये क्या है? Inadequate response or service failure show कर रहा है. Now these four specific behavior, ये जो behaviors है ना, examples मुझे आपको देने हैं. They represent four overarching categories of events that is to get consumer. Okay, outcome, service delivery, interpersonal relationships, inadequate service failure. बेसिकली क्या शो कर रहा है? हमें कैटेगरी शो कर रहा है. ठीक है. तो ये क्या है? डेटा रिडक्शन हो गई है. डेटा रिड्यूस किया है. रिड्यूस होकर इस फॉर्म में आ गया. हमने जो कैटेगराइजेशन की है, ये क्या है? डेटा रिड्यूस हो गया ना, रिडक्शन हो गया. कहाँ एक लंबा चौड़ा जुमला था आपके पास, कहाँ पीछे एक काफी लेंथी पैसेज था, वो आपने इसको स्क्वीज करके आपने 4 कैटेगरीज में इसको डिवाइड किया. आउटकम, सर्विस, इंटरपर्सनल रिलेशनशिप्स एंड फेलियर. यानी कि हम जो कैटेगराइजेशन करते हैं तो वो लॉन्ग टेस्ट पे स्टडी करते हैं. हम देखते हैं कि बेसिकली किस चीज के अराउंड ये इवॉल्व कर रहा है, वो कैटेगरी. ठीक है. जैसे ये आर्टिकल मैं आपको देखने पड़ा, मैं आपसे बोला ये आर्टिकल मैंने आपको दिया. मैंने आपसे कहा कि फाइंड कैटेगरीज है, डेटा डेटा रिडक्शन करें इस तरह से कि आप मेरे इसमें से कैटेगरीज उठाएं. ठीक है. तो आप सबने जो था 4 कैटेगरी उठाई था. राइट. सभी ने अपनी 4 कैटेगरीज. इनको लगता है कि जब ये पूरी इंफॉर्मेशन रिसर्च इंफॉर्मेशन कंटेंट डेवलप कर रहा है. So we're talking about economy, we're talking about sharing, we're talking about inflation, we're talking about the structure, chart categories. This is chart categories, everyone chart categories. ठीक है. सही है. राइट. इस कैटेगरी से होती है कि आप पूरे डाटा देते हो उसके आर्टिकल के रिलीज करते हैं. आप 4 वर्ड्स देते हैं. पहले थीम बनाते हैं लेकिन. ठीक है. थीम से आप आते हैं कैटेगरी से. मतलब फॉरम से एक इतना छोटा आर्टिकल से कोडिंग करना, कैटेगराइजेशन करना काफी चैलेंजिंग और बहुत समटाइम्स दैट आई आर्टिकल मेक थिंग्स. तो थीम्स आप लिखने सेंटेंसेस के फॉर्म. वहां से फिर आप आइए टुवर्ड्स वर्ड्स, टुवर्ड्स इवेंट्स एंड टुवर्ड्स कैटेगरीज. ये भी चीज है. राइट. सो इंटरेस्टिंग. Now, 2 of these categories were further separated into respectively 3 categories representing service delivery or procedural failures. So, हमने categories से आगे सब categories में सब categories growth और efficiency में. Or 2 of these categories were further separated into respectively 3 categories representing service delivery or procedural failures, जिसमें unreliability है, inaccessibility and company policies. And 2 categories representing interpersonal relationships or interaction. इसमें sensitive behavior भी आ जाता है और impolite behavior भी आ जाता है. The main reason for this was the categories procedural failures and interactional failures would otherwise be too heterogeneous with respect to the composition and more importantly with respect to the ways of recording and dealing with failures. तो जहाँ पे आपको लगता है इससे मतलब ट्रेन हो जाता है. इसका मतलब ये है कि जहाँ पे लगता है कि पूरी कैटेगराइजेशन है ब्रॉड हो सकती है, इसमें अदर कैटेगरीज को एग्जिस्ट कर सकते हैं जो आपको अलग नहीं करते. वहाँ पर हम सब कैटेगरीज बनाए. For instance, avoiding anger in response to unreliability, you most likely call for a different and maybe even opposite approach than avoiding anger in response to company policies. राइट, ठीक है. जहाँ आपको लगता है कि किसी भी इवेंट के मल्टीपल वजूहत हो सकती हैं, वहाँ पर हम सब कैटेगरीज को बना सकते हैं. So sometimes if we want to capture the number of times a particular event or theme occurs, how respondents bring up certain themes or events. So quantification of a qualitative data may provide you with a rough idea about the relative importance of the categories and subcategories. We are now moving towards towards quantification of qualitative data. So, right? And we are given some table here to this extent. Trying to quantify qualitative data. To provide you with a rough idea about the relative importance of categories and subcategories. Otherwise, we don't get this data. This is one of the indicators of noise in our subcategory is broken price generation 1.35% in the under behavior, 866 2% of the total number of people in the selection is 600 number. The sixth column indicates that 9 participants mentioned broken increase price arguments as the sole cause of hunger, whereas 3 participants mentioned at least one additional protocol. जब हमने देखिए हम quantitative यूज कर रहे हैं, numbers यूज कर रहे हैं, data यूज कर रहे हैं, quantify categories. उससे मालूम करेंगे कौन सा पैटर्न कितना बन रहा है. ठीक है. वैसे फॉर इंस्टेंस मैंने आपसे कहा कि पूरा आर्टिकल जब आप लोग पढ़ते हैं जॉब का इसमें मैंने आपको बोला कि 4 कैटेगरीज निकाल के दें, या मैंने आपसे बोला कि 5 कैटेगरीज के लिए आर्टिकल जो है कि इंट्रोडक्शन करेंगे बाय डेटा कोडिंग और कैटेगराइजेशन. मैंने आपसे बोला कि अपने कोड जान अपने लगभग जो है वो 4-5 सब्जेक्ट होना है. ठीक है. अगर आपको लगता है कि कोड से आगे सब कैटेगरीज भी एग्जिस्ट करती है, कैटेगरी से आगे सब कैटेगरीज भी एग्जिस्ट करती है. ठीक है. यहाँ पर काउंटिंग करनी पड़ेगी. और समीर ने 4 कोड निकाले, 4 कैटेगरी बनाई, 4 इवेंट निकाले. आर्टिकल रिजल्ट्स. ठीक है. सही. तो समीना ने 5 कोर्स निकाले. मुझे लगता है कि कोर्स के अंदर सब कैटेगरीज भी एग्जिस्ट करता है. राइट. अब आप नंबर्स यूज करेंगे. ठीक है. जैसे यहाँ पे हम यूज करें so see what is going on. Situations of anger service consumption setting. So subcategories के हमारे पास ability, propositions, reliability is a major category. Then we have subcategories and delivery promise, service provision, We then have I think we have so we have these categories of products. And reliability. If the service firm did not perform the service dependably, how many number of behaviors say that this happened on 26? कितना परसेंट है ये 17.6 में so the absolute and this is percentage. Incidents में कितने दफा हुआ है 26. Where only one factor was responsible out of this level 873. There were multiple factors involved in 83. ठीक है, because of which unreliability in the service occurred. ठीक है. Delivery promises में हमने क्या देखा कि service provider does not provide service at the time promises to do so. So 140 times this was times the percentage, it was 11.74%. The number of incidences, it was this single में हम ये देख रहे हैं, multiple में हम ये देख रहे हैं. Example के है break for comfort with dentist or physician when impressive or on appealing of a tax. We have service provision. Service provider does not provide the service that was agreed upon. So, how many number of behaviors say that this has happened for you? In terms of percentage, lesser than this, right? Then number of behaviors and the percentage of incidents. Lesser than this. Number of behaviors is in the factor incident, 22. And multiple factors यहाँ पे correspond to service distribution of failure, that is less than this. इसका मतलब क्या है? Example so clients receives different cars than agreed upon with the car rental company or different department than agreed upon with travel agent. Bicycle repairs, car mechanics, or building contractors carry out different work than agreed upon work that was not agreed upon with their clients. For example, अगर आपको numbers कुछ बता रहे हैं, इसकी numbers, इसकी significance. Pricing agreements are broken. So again, on the anchors above, these are these are the anchors, these are the outputs. So 12 times assessment reported. Much less than this, much less than this, much less than this. Pricing के लेके जो procedural failure है, वो in terms of behavior 1.3% है. Small other figures. So after a party, we called it out. You were with the party of 5, and we take a small or fixed your price. अगर हम arrive and the driver asks the regular clock price. ठीक है, तो चारों केसेस जो है हमारे पास चारों सब कैटेगरीज जो है तीनों से है. इसमें एक मेजर थीम हमारे पास क्या है? कोलैबोरेटिव्स में फिर हमारे पास कैटेगरीज एंड डिलीवरी प्रॉमिसेस और नॉट राइट सर्विस प्रोविजन इज डिप्लॉरेबल इन पॉसिबल से चेंजेस आर रिक्वायर्ड. ठीक है, तो नंबर्स के तरीके से मालूम किया कि उनकी जो इंटेंसिटी है कितने लोगों ने इसको रिपोर्ट किया एज अ बिहेवियर में क्या परसेंटेज थी, कितने लोगों ने कहा कि सिंगल फैक्टर से होता है, कितने लोगों ने कहा कि मल्टीपल फैक्टर से होता है. हमारे पास ये कुछ एग्जांपल्स में सारा में बात करते हैं. We likewise have an accessibility. ये भी एक हमारे पास कोड है और ये इसकी सब कैटेगरीज है. We have another code with no subcategories, another code with no subcategories. Okay. So let's just take a class. So and all because of my okay. Now, study into events typically elicit customer anger and service consumption. Certain is being delivered from markets. जो पर टेबल आप लोग देख रहे हैं markets, ठीक है? So we call it together to organize here and arrange. So now let's go to why availability from the data. We were able to combine the 28 subcategories into 7 categories and 4 subcategories. Then I'm going to expand here into 28 subcategories. 7 major categories, including super categories. 7 categories are reliability and accessibility, price, sensitive behavior and right behavior, outcome failure and negative responses to failure. But these categories and subcategories are defined in the second level. Table 6.5. Grade column provides examples on the category. Table 6.3 explains how data display organizes algorithm information. So, in a way that helps you to draw conclusions. We can look at draw like this now. We can reduce the value of information. Numbers of which is the current processes and the process. The categories and the corresponding subcategories are given certificates to get underrepresented in column level. Column provides information on how many times this components were mentioned by the experts. Column provides information about how many times it was mentioned. This is a 5 or 6 minute numbers. What conclusion are we drawing? Conclusion drawing is a final analytical activity in the process of qualitative analysis. It is the essence of data analysis. Is at this point where you answer your research question by examining what identified to stand for. Finding about explanations of observed patterns and conditions of other what master analysis. So the matrix that we developed, what do you conclude from the discussion? So the identification of precipitating events of anger is critical to understanding this emotion. And क्या है एक इमोशन है सही है इसको समझने के लिए हमने सारे इमोशन को देखना चाहिए what's more for service for management is important to understand what critical behaviors from their side typically elicit anger and customers. The service management should know what elicits anger and customers from us. And this basic necessity is to investigate precipitating events of customer service. The results of this study provide a complete and ambiguous representation of the events and it expands on the appraisal theory. So 7 categories were found. Incident anger. Stand after anger reliability. This was anger. Nazar आता है accessibility में company policies and sensitive behavior and impolite behavior outcome failure and adequate response to service failures. Now each of these events was found to be sufficient cause of customer. However, the compound exhibits that were reported by the participants in the study suggest that critical behaviors and service providers may also interact with the effects from the external environment. following findings imply certain extensions to service marketing research. You know, what the themes are there? The service management will be important themes. Goals are important as well. Okay? Researchers have previously examined the effects of core service failures that were over. However, this study shows that the decisions are handled and implemented to these factors. For service bonus management, the seven categories suggest areas in which managers take action to prevent customer handling. So, solution number discussion से क्या मालूम किया कि customer handler जो है solution estimate करा जा सकता है इन सात वजूहात की वजह से भी. For example, the finding that inaccessibility of services causes customers to get angry suggests that service providers may benefit from being easily accessible products with us. The finding that customer anger may because one's sensitivity and politeness of service staff implies that hiring the right people, adequate training of service employees, and finding ways to motivate staff reduces anger. And the present study partly converges with prior studies that have categorized dissatisfying experiences with service levels and retail failures. जो हमने कोर्स डिटरमिन की है कैटेगरी डिटरमिन की है they very much are in congruence with the past studies. Similar pattern में similar pattern boundary नजर आ रही है. Besides the similarities and important differences with the pre-mentioned studies, for instance, incidents of reported by participants of the study include difficulties with engaging in the service process and unfair reviews and estimation. Additional information given. The policies be unfair. These behaviors account for 20% of the reported anger related incidences. They will not come forward as unfavorable behaviors. सबसे शुरू करता है जो सेवन कैटेगरीज हमारे पास हैं we are seeing from past studies. ठीक है वो मज़ीद चीज़ें हमने डिस्कवर की हैं. Now this shows the classification scheme developed where builds on and extends earlier models of service and retail. Probability आप हर जगह और other methods of technical analysis qualitative data. I can stop here. I can make a assume you understand what kind of relationship we have.